So take your Bibles today, and the time that we have, I'm excited about it because we're going to have some fun today. Strange enough, we're going to laugh and we're going to have some fun. And I'm going to communicate to you, and I'm going to teach to you, and I'm not really going to be the preacher today. So I'm just going to communicate to you really one key thought, but the way I'm going to get there is going to be a little bit out of the norm. And so we're going to have a good time with this. So Ecclesiastes Chapter 2. That's where I want you to start. That's where we're gonna the bulk of our text, because we're in this series of study through Ecclesiastes, and we're calling it Chasing the Wind, because really the teacher of Ecclesiastes, based on probably Solomon's wisdom, offers an awful lot of insights to us, great wisdom to us, but so much of it is like trying to grab smoke. It's hard to do. You just really can't do it. And today, Solomon gives to us, or the teacher gives to us, probably one of the greatest relevant issues of our life, and that's our work. Our work. Our job. And frankly, to be honest with you, it's a very negative look from the teacher's point of view. And so we're gonna look at this, and first off, we're gonna find out a couple of interesting tidbits, and then we're gonna get into why this is so negative, and how do we correct, or how do we live right in our workplace, or how should we live in our workplace. There's a scripture that is so often strange. It's in your sermon notes there. Because there are scriptures in our lives that we read across, and we're like scratching our head going, I just don't get this scripture. So what is that talking about? What does that say? And then, so at the bottom of your sermon notes there, Ephesians 6:5 says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ." Now, the first thought that we have when we read something like this, like, wow, the Bible's so outdated. We don't have slaves anymore. Like, this is so bizarre. Let me just help you out here real quick, and just as I communicate God's truth to you. If you work a job, guess what? You are a slave. Sorry. I mean, it's just kind of the way it goes. I don't mean that in an unfair way, or it is just what it is. If you have bills because you have you've spent something and you have a credit card and you put a bill, or you have a bill, it comes in, your house payment, guess what? You are a slave to that bill. You have to pay that bill. So therefore, you have to go do what they expect, and what they expect is that you work to get money. And then you give them your money, and therefore you really are their slave. Interesting. We don't have to go very far to scratch our head on this one in reality, because when we're working for somebody else, or for their pleasure, or for them to take care of us, we become in a bondage to that person, company, organization, or even bill. And so we ask ourselves first, like how in the world did it get to this point? Like Paul would talk about this, and when he says, serve wholeheartedly. Really? Like, I don't think that many of us wake up in the morning and go, hey, I'm going to go serve wholeheartedly to my job. If there are some of you who do that, don't raise your hand. We don't want to hear it at all. And then he goes on, he says, masters, treat your slaves the same way, because if you're a boss and you have people underneath you that man, treat them with respect. Do the right thing for them. But so where does this come from? Well, basically and honestly, this comes from creation. So all the way back to Genesis, when we learned that Adam and Eve, if I may, walked in the garden before the sin, they walked in the garden. Now here's the thing, we have no idea what they did. Like what do you do in the garden of creation? Like what is in the Garden of Eden? I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. Like, what did Adam and Eve do? They, like, on a lounge chair, sipping up on their drink or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't have any idea. It's just not given to us. Partly because it's probably not important. But what is important is where God says to them, I want you to go name the animals. Well, that's an interesting job. But my point just being simply that God said, I want you to go do this. I want you to care for the garden. Now, I have no idea what that means. I wonder if, this was before sin, I wonder if God said, hey, guys, will you guys go take care of that plant over there? It looks like it needs a little bit of help. And they walk over with their hoe, and they go, yeah, this is fun. And off they go. Because there's no sin, they would have had fun in whatever God told them to do, right? This makes some sense, just practical. I realize this is all mycology. You have to come up with your own thoughts on this. But I'm thinking that everything that happened in the garden when God said, I want you to go work, I want you to go do, don't forget, God did. He created the world. And he said, it is all good. So I'm thinking that if everything is good in the garden, then whatever Adam and Eve were doing was good. And when Adam was naming the animals, Tyrannosaurus Rex, I don't know. It was good, right? And then sin enters the world. Sin enters the world. Adam and Eve eat the fruit that God said don't do that to. In fact, it says there in Genesis 3, it says, he said to Adam, because you have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you not to do. Listen to this. Genesis 3, verse 17, in the middle of the verse, cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you, or for you, and you shall eat of the plants of the field, and by the sweat of your face, the sweat of your brow, you will eat. Wow. So after the sin, so much for the fun and the beauty of and the greatness of the garden, here we are cursed in working. Now, I don't want to hear a poll. I don't want to take a poll, but certainly I would imagine that the majority of us here, if I was to ask you to raise your hand if you feel like you work in a cursed job, most of you would. It's unfortunate, but the reality, like I work in a cursed job, Pastor. This is not fun. I do not enjoy this. I'm slave to it. I am slave to the job, the finances, and to others who are in control of me, and they tell me what to do day in, day out. And frankly, it's not always good. You know the job. You probably have one. Maybe you don't, and if you're blessed if you don't have one that's that way. Or maybe you volunteer with something and it doesn't go down well. I don't know what your scenario is. Maybe you're retired and you just can't stand being retired because you feel like you need to work. I just want to plant this one thought. That maybe God instilled in us, in his image, the need to work. Because God created. And can I use that literally? God created, God worked. Please allow me that. Don't argue with me about it. I don't want to hear it. But God did, and God was a doer, and God created, and God formed. So maybe in our DNA spiritually, we really are people who need to be doing something. Maybe we need to be active, creating, and generating. We call it work. It's interesting how we see our lives and our jobs, and specifically. We have a very unique perspective. And it's not always good by any means, because we have to work hard. We have to keep at working to make everything, all the ends meet. We have to make a living from it, and then we have to make other people happy, our bosses and all the upline, and it goes on and on and on. You get it. We understand it. And so we come to Solomon and the teacher and the great wisdom that we're going to reap from the wisdom from God that he has been given. And so we find ourselves in chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, verse 17. A little bit lengthy, but let me read it with you. And I'm reading out of the New King James Version. So here's what it says. Verse 17. Therefore, I hated life because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me. And we get a witness to that. Can you just raise your hand and a witness? Like, that guy is right on the money right there. This work that I do is distressing to me. And I kind of hate life sometimes because of that. And he says, for all is vanity in grasping at the wind. Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because, catch this, I must leave it to someone else, to a man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will rule over my labor, in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Therefore, I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he must leave his heritage to a man who's not labored for it. This also stinks. That's not in there, sorry. And is a great evil, a great injustice, some verses say, or some translations say. For what is a man for all his labor and for all the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? Verse 23. For all his days are sorrowful, and his work is burdensome. Even in the night, his heart takes no rest. This is also vanity. Nothing is better for a man than he should eat and drink, and his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat, and who can have enjoyment more than I, he says. For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity, and grasping for the wind, reaching for smoke. In this negative, incredibly negative exposition of what the teacher wants us to hear, there's three things that are in here that I want to communicate to you today and have fun with. We start out and jump right in. Solomon's point of this is that working and labor or your job is pointless. That's the negative part of what he's saying here. Let me just get it to a fine moment here. It's pointless. Everything under the sun. Don't walk out of here saying, Pastor Mike said my job is pointless, therefore I'm going to quit. That's not what I'm saying. Stay with the whole message. Stay with the whole message. But what Solomon is saying, or what the teacher is giving to us, is that it is pointless. I mean, here's what's going to happen. You're going to work. Let me just ask you, when was the last time over 1,000 years that the wisest man in the world lived, and he worked and he did incredible things? When was the last time that you referenced Solomon? Yeah. I mean, do you remember who did this in the 1900s or the 1800s or the 1700s? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a point where we work, and who's going to remember it? That's really kind of what he's saying here. Like, well, what's the purpose and meaning of life? Well, here's the thing. Many of us today try to draw meaning into our life from our jobs. And we think this is who we are. This is what I'm all about. And so we define ourselves by our work. I'm a teacher, I'm a farmer, I work in construction, or I do this, or whatever you fill in the blank. Let me just say, that's what you do. That's not who you are. And if you're going to try to find meaning in that, then it's going to be pointless because, frankly, no one's going to remember the thousands of people who it took to build the Golden Gate Bridge. Right? We drive across it, we love it, we excite, like, wow, look where we are. We don't even know who they are. And so Solomon's making a clear point there that that's not what we're about. That's not what defines us. That's not where we need to be looking for the meaning of life. And so he starts out and saying, therefore I hated life because it was distressing. I felt like this was what life was about, and it's not. He says, oh man, I'm a king. I'm a preacher, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm a counselor, I'm the head of the largest construction company in all the world. I mean, Solomon built everything everywhere, right? All of it pointless. And not to jump ahead, but one of the things that he's meant by pointless is because those who came after him ruined it, right? I'll get back to that one. Here's where the rubber meets the road for us today. These are staggering. And it's sad about we talk about the pointlessness of our work and how we feel about it sometimes. On a global picture worldwide, 85% of the worldwide workers say they hate their job. 85% of the global picture of the jobs, the people hate their job. 70% of all Americans say they're in the wrong career. 70% of Americans say they're in the wrong career. 84% of American workers would leave their current job if they could. How in the world do we get to these staggering points? And we kind of understand what Solomon is saying here, because obviously, if we were to take a poll here, probably the same stats would come out, or close to it. 70% of you would say, I hate my job, or I'm in the wrong career. And we would fall into those numbers probably very closely. How does it get there? I'll tell you how it gets there. Simply because we try to find success in what we do, not who we are. And so we find no satisfaction in our jobs. None at all. That's what causes us. We go to work every day, and you know the routine is humdrum, tedious. Get work, same thing, same people, same results every day. Maybe for somebody else, you're helping people find their own and fulfill their own dreams. You're putting in your hours, you're putting in your work, and somebody else is getting all the benefit out of it. They demand time away from your life. They want you, your bondage to them, and you have to miss meals, you have to miss things in life. It's horrible. Of course, there's sleepless nights, bad moods, ulcers, and all work-related stress that comes along with it. Hey, aren't you glad you came today? Let me move one more step of what he says into this dark pit that we're already in. We're there. Let's just go ahead and look at all of it. It's fruitless, he says. Their work here is fruitless. It just doesn't mean anything at all. In fact, what he says, the truth here, write this down, you really can't take it with you. So you labor, you toil, you build your empire, and you can't take it with you when you die, the old cliche. I hated all the labor in which I toiled under the sun because I have to leave it to someone else, is what he says. I mean, it's so classic right there. Solomon's building and he's learning, he's growing, he's doing all these great things, and one day the Holy Spirit says, you can't take this with you. And neither can we. And it's horrible because the next step is even worse. You go to your job and you build your job so well. You do such a good job with it. You're proud of it. And all of a sudden, bam, one day you're done. And guess what? Somebody else takes control of what you built. And the reality of it is they ruin it. Some of you have probably been there. You were so proud of what you did, so proud of what you built. You were so excited about, look what I've done, look what I've done. Somebody else comes in, takes the reins. You have no control, by the way, because you gave that up. And they ruin what you created. Right? Because you have no control over it. So you can't control what you've done when you have to leave it behind. Oh my goodness. You can designate to people, you can help the process, but the reality of it is, what you've created, sorry, you have no control. It's kind of like, your investments, when you give the investments and you give the authority to somebody else and they ruin it. Or you give your lifelong earnings to your kids and they blow it. Oh, I could meddle. You understand where I'm going with this. You have no control. And so Solomon's really concerned with two issues of the earthly problems here. That you work, there's no profit from hard work because you're going to have to give it to somebody else and you can't take it with you. But fortunately, there's a third thing that we want to talk about. And the third thing that is contentedness. But it's a challenge to find contentedness in our work. There's a challenge for all of us, and this is really where I want to spend the time as we begin to wrap this up and go downhill, because I think there's a point here for us. This is a very relevant message, I think, for us today. When we're talking about our jobs and sometimes the lack of jobs and the challenges of jobs, contentedness in our work. he finally says something powerful, and I want to just point it out to you. Verse 24, he says, nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. It's almost as if he's saying, of all things, this is how it should be. This is what life should be about, that we should have jobs that we really do enjoy, that we really find success in, that we really find enjoyment from. And he says, this I saw was from the hand of God. And there's got to be a point where his heart cries out. He says, I feel like I'm grasping for the wind, but this is what God should want for us, this wonderful enjoyment. But what he's saying is, and he continues on, is like, that's just not there. At least so it seems. Because if there's a point in your life where you have to turn in your transformational mind, body, soul, our heart, and we embrace this very thought, that my job without God in the midst is pointless and fruitless. Let me demonstrate, and just in a weak way, have some fun. I need up to 6 volunteers. Now, before you volunteer too quick, we're going to laugh with you. And in the first service, it was all women who came up here. Okay, I need 6 people. Come up on stage. Jumping right up here. Just jumping right on up here. Come on, right on up. I need 6 people. Men. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Love this. Okay. Oh, okay, that's 6 people. Need a little help over here. Gonna need a little help over here. Just with Sharon. Just want to make sure. Yep. Okay, all right. Right in the middle of the stage. There you go. Okay. All right. Here we go. Right behind you. Wait, where's my... These go either way. Where's my 6th person? I thought there were 6 coming up. All right, okay, yeah. Kevin, come on up here, man. Sweet. All right, here we are. Okay. This, I love this. Here we go. Go. I'm pretty confident you guys were experts at this already. In the awkwardness that we're watching you guys, we are really having a good time. We want to laugh out really loud, but let me just ask you. It's probably This is what happens when you buy these 6 for $3.99. They're not very good. They're really flimsy, and they're smaller paddles too. Don't tell them that, but that's really. How that happened? Right out of that go down. Okay, so here's what I want to find out. Okay, so do you feel like sometimes this is your job? I mean, make the connection here, like, right? Do you see, like, sometimes you go to work and like, you're just doing for what? First off, like, what? Corey, I mean, you didn't do a very good job with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to call you out, I'm just saying. You get my point here that, like, this is like a lesson in futility. It's pointless and it's fruitless.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thoughts about how pointless and fruitless this might be.
It seems like it would be easy to do, but when you get into it, you kind of look really silly, you know?
Right.
As most jobs are, right? I mean, this is what I'm talking about here. Right? Your observations?
Yeah, I wasn't fully prepared for this.
No training.
No training.
No training.
No training, right? Sure. I mean, there
Yeah,
we go.
especially left-handed work.
Oh, is it harder left-handed?
Yeah, see, this one would
Well,
not
yeah, of course.
stand a chance, much less than.
I find it easy.
Phoebe, we're not talking to you. You're too good at it.
Right?
Right? I
She
mean,
was trying to show me how to do it.
And it still didn't connect, did it? Like sometimes they're just pointless and fruitless, right?
Yeah.
So, and all, even, Phoebe, how does this make you feel that you can do this?
Very good.
And is this going to carry you through college? No, just don't go that girl. Don't go that way. Give them a big hand. And I mean, it's a great illustration for us to see and to be part of. Take it with you, Phoebe. You can have it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just the idea of trying to help us understand that sometimes this is what Solomon's talking about. And even at some point when you can master this, right? When you can master it, what's the point? And there's something that we can draw from there. That when we look at in our jobs and things, we go like even if I got it good, what's the point? You see, there has to be a connection away from just trying to be successful at it and being able to do it versus there's a purpose to it. And so we make that connection that God is the one and the only one. Just what Solomon said, I see this is from God, that man should have joy and fun in his labor. And so what he's saying is if God's not in your job, not in your career, then you're not going to have success and find satisfaction. You're not going to have enjoyment. Fulfilling and fulfillment is only found when God blesses you with it. You can find fulfillment when we acknowledge that God is the one who blessed us with the skills and the abilities to do the job. And we find fulfillment when we really realize how hard work really is the means which God blesses us with income and pay. Why? Because very likely that's how the kingdom DNA is. When we work hard, because God works hard for us. And we can find fulfillment when we wholeheartedly do the work of God as if we're doing it for God himself. You see, that's the crux of the message. That's really where it all comes down to. That we have the capacity to be successful and fulfilled in some jobs. But really, we're not ever successful or fulfilled until we do it for God, with God. And that's why it's so relevant for us today. If 70% of us here can't stand what we're doing, then how do we reframe our relationship to our work? And that's the question I have for you today. How do you reframe how you go in, whether tomorrow or Tuesday, realizing it's a holiday weekend? How do you reframe your work? If you're one of those who goes in, you just loathe going to work, how do you reframe that? How do you live out what Paul says? In people who are in bondage to their jobs, how do you live this out? How do you find the joy? How do you live wholeheartedly as if unto the Lord? That's the whole message today of where we're at. I don't know how you are navigating through some of the things that I said, but let me help you out just in case you can't think of anything. Let me give you some thoughts that you can begin to explore maybe in your own life. Maybe you can you consider this as you reframe your work thoughts, as you transform how you go to work? Have you ever considered, or can you consider, that God has you there not for your sake, but for the sake of somebody else? That while you might not like your job, or you might not like your setting right now, have you ever thought that you're there because somebody else needs to hear from you and through you? You, after all, are the image bearer of God. Now, they're an image bearer of God, but you're the holy image bearer of God that you can speak into their life. Have you ever thought that you might be the one that does that? Can you consider the opportunity that you are going to network with somebody else to better yourself? Like God uses people to connect the dots to us. God connects people to people so that he can get people in the right spot. I know it's like, well, why does he have to do that? Because he just does. And so maybe you're at your job today and you're not liking it, but God's using somebody to connect with you and to help you get to another place, a better job. But you walk in with a bad attitude, and frankly, what they're saying is like, you look like a porcupine. I mean, I want to come and hug you, but as soon as I do, ouch! I don't want to be part of it. You're so negative. I just don't want to be part of that. And so you can't network with them because you just had such a bad attitude. If you transform your thinking and try to find godly contentment because God's got you there for now, maybe you're there for someone or to better yourself. Or maybe would you consider, or can you consider, to reframe this, that the Lord's using you to bring him glory in hard things. Maybe your job just sucks. Probably some of you are thinking, that's my job. But the only way that God can get through to you is make you be in a position like that, so you finally say, okay, God, I'm done. I give. And he wants you to bring him glory when you rely on him 100%. Not 10, not 20, but 100%. And at some point, you're saying, I surrender. I surrender. I've seen people go through this where they finally say, I'm done. I give. God, I call out and I cry out to you. You see, it's easy when jobs are easy to forget about God. It's easy to forget about God when your job is all too good and too easy. You don't need him anymore. Maybe lastly, can you consider as you reframe or try to think about reframing that you need to transform your mind, your heart, your soul about your job? And then be part of God's original plan that he has for you. You see, I don't think that there's any greater calling to any of us when we work in a broken and cursed world, but that the gospel so redeems that. The blood of Jesus so redeems it in and through us that we are the great light to the world. A world that's broken and cursed. But we're not. We're not cursed. Because we believe in Jesus. And his blood has purified us. And he's purified you. And you are that light into your job world. And so Solomon, his bottom line is, worship God. Every day, even at your job, worship God. Well, Pastor, if I worship God in my job, I'll get fired. Yeah. I know you're thinking, well, you want me fired? No, I don't. I know people who've been fired from their job because of sharing Jesus. God's got them. God's got them. All things work together for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. He makes all things work together. It's a big tent, my friends. And so when you pour out in the name of Jesus, God pours back in. And that really is what this passage is about and what Solomon's complaints are all about. While it seems like it's just pointless, like we're chasing the wind, well, in reality we are, unless God's in the middle of the picture and the gospel gets to be elevated. You will find huge purpose in your job. And if you're not working a job and you're working, you're volunteering, or you're doing something different, I'm just telling you, do the same thing that applies. I don't care if you're retired and you're volunteering or whatever it is. If you go in and you don't have God as a purpose and the point of it, then you're just gonna. It's not like, yeah, it's okay. Man, I don't want to live in okay. I want to live in God. Let me experience you, right? In everything I do. In everything I do. And I hope that you do too. Because we have a wow God. We have a wow God. We simply have a wow God. And he wants you to flourish and have fun and enjoy. But you only have it when you have that transformation of heart, soul, mind, and body. And so that's really what I'm calling you to today. Take home with you. You see, you're going to walk out of here in about 3 minutes. And you're going to go to work, and you're going to have a choice. And that choice is going to be, I'm going to walk in my work with a bad attitude or a good attitude. I'm going to walk in with a smile and a hope that God points me to somebody, or that God helps me find somebody that'll make me better, or I get to share Jesus with, or I get to, your whole life hinges today on what you choose to do. Let's stand together. Let's stand together. Wouldn't it be amazing if we went into our work or to whatever occupies our time with the intentionality that God is why I'm here? And we were able to reach into this broken and cursed world, and we were able to grab someone out of that darkness and into the light of the Lord. Imagine if each and every one of us did that, maybe just a couple times a year. The impact that it would create. We would change Sacramento. We would change it in a very short amount of time. I think that's what the gospel tells us. I believe that's what Paul says when he ends up saying, whatever you do it as unto Jesus, as if he was there. And that's who you worked for. And he was standing right next to you when you walk into your job. Wow. We would change the world like the disciples did. So you make that choice when you walk out of here. You make that choice right now. You're going to decide whether I'm going to walk out happy, I'm going to walk in hating everybody that goes on. So it's my prayer. It's my prayer for you that when you walk into your job, wherever that be, wherever you walk into where you volunteer, wherever you walk into, that you walk into with the purpose and the intentionality that God lead me to who you want me to be reaching. That I am here on purpose. I hate my job, Lord, but I'm here to glorify you. The words of Solomon, the words what God wants. It's the gospel redemption. That's the gospel redemption. That's my prayer for you. Let's go live it out. Let's give the Lord a hand.